New GDP figures, stricter BE regulations coming in 2022, and government looks for new ways to get South Africa's economy going. All of that and more in this week's episode of Free Marketeers News. Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Chris here with another Free Marketeers episode. I'm flying solo for this week. Hopefully next week we'll have another guest on, but for this week I'm bringing you the biggest news, economics and news issues for the week ending 10 September 2021. We're going to jump right into it with South Africa's latest GDP numbers for Q2 of 2021. So South Africa's GDP expanded by 1.2% in the second quarter. The seasonally adjusted quarter-on-quarter expansion follows a 1% increase in GDP recorded in the first 3 months of 2021, according to data published by Stats SA revealed this past Tuesday. Unadjusted real GDP for the first 6 months of 2021 increased by 7.5% for the same period a year ago. Of course, the economy is struggling a lot to recover from COVID-19 government lockdowns and from the pandemic itself. The impact of lockdowns as well as social distancing measures saw GDP contract a revised 6.4% in 2020, resulting in more than 1 million job losses. South Africa's 1.2% quarter-on-quarter expansion in the 3 months to end June 2021 was led by the transport, storage, and communications industries, which expanded by 6.9% and contributed 0.5 percentage points to the overall GDP number. Now, I wanted to share with you just a few slides from Stats SA themselves so you can see these numbers in context. So here we have growth rates for Q2 2021. You have real GDP in Q2 2021 quarter on quarter. Then you have year on year in the middle and 6 month to 6 month in the final circle there to show you another slide. I think this one is particularly good to put these things in context because while, of course, we're glad to hear that GDP has grown, we need to keep in mind just the damage that was done by lockdowns. So if I show you guys this next one, this next screen, let me just bring that up. As you can see there, the economy grew by 1.2% in Q2 2021, but in relation to the rest of what happened beforehand, especially, of course, last year, you can see just how bad that damage was last year with the lockdowns. And of course, before that, look how badly we were doing in terms of economic growth. We didn't have the right ideas and policies in place before the pandemic happened. And that's why we're in such a bad position now when these sort of black swan events come about. So unfortunately, quite a lot of work for South Africa to do to get back on track. Moving on to our next news item, government's new policies would double your tax bill. And this is according to a study from trade union Solidarity. So they published a new report showing that the burden on South Africa's taxpayers could double if the white paper on the national health insurance is accepted and the green paper on social security is implemented after being reviewed. According to the report, South Africans pay incredibly high taxes in global terms, while the government generally fails to fulfill its side of the social contract. The report revealed that the tax to GDP ratio in South Africa is the second highest in the world after Sweden. Data from the South African Revenue Service shows that 3.4 million taxpayers pay 91.2% of all personal income taxes in the country. These are individuals earning more than 250,000 Rand annually. So ever fewer people carrying more and more of the tax burden. Impact studies conducted by Solidarity show that the implementation of the NHI could result in a tax burden of the majority of taxpayers increasing by 36%. This figure considers a proposed 5.5% payroll tax, which is said to be the preferred option to fund the scheme. Now, it is clear that these policies will result in massive tax burdens for South Africa's already constrained tax base, and of course, it will lead necessarily to more tax evasion and probably, in all respects, an open tax revolt. If these two policy documents were to be implemented, citizens could expect about on average twice as much tax, or 113.2%, according to Solidarity. This burden would vary depending on income group, with certain people hit harder than others. More specifically, with the proposed tax adjustments for both the NHI and the Social Security Fund, individuals earning between 7,000 and 18,000 rand per month will be paying 4 times more tax than at present. So one can assume with lots of these social policies and plans that the target is always the rich, quote unquote, but often the burden actually falls on middle income tax earners and citizens. Moving on to our next item, the government has extended South Africa's state of disaster as it weighs up lockdown restrictions. President Ramaphosa's cabinet approved the extension of South Africa's national state of disaster by another month. This means that the state of disaster will now run until 15 October 2021, but I think we all know it's just going to keep on going. They're going to continue extending the state of disaster for as long as probably they want to or need to. Government is looking for new ways to restart South Africa's economy, including vaccine passports. President Ramaphosa has directed his cabinet members to look at possible innovations which could assist the resumption of activities in South Africa. This is according to Minister in the Presidency, Mondli Gungubele. Addressing the media on Thursday, 2 September, Gungubele said this includes the possible introduction of a COVID-19 vaccine passport and other incentives which have been drawn from both local and international examples. He cited the example of Limpopo Health MEC Poppy Ramatuba, whose department held discussions with liquor traders in the province about refusing to sell alcohol to unvaccinated customers. Gungubele said that churches had also approached the government to expand the limitations on the 50 people gatherings. He also said, quote, "The approach of government in dealing with the measures of COVID-19 is that we must be as indiscriminate as possible, we must be as objective as possible, and scientific rationale must govern us," end quote. So if government is telling us they're going to be scientific, we know that they're going to continue, that they will again ban activities on beaches, and they will ban the selling of open-toed shoes and rotisserie chicken, because apparently they're guided by scientific rationale. I mean, government should seriously look at repealing things like onerous labor regulations, opening South Africa to more trade, improving our port system, looking at possibly more tax exemptions for small to medium businesses, looking at tax incentives for businesses who hire more people, looking at restricting the power of bargaining councils and the unions, especially in the public sector, looking at slashing public sector wages and public sector spending, looking at spinning off many of South Africa's SOEs and finally making proper progress on Eskom. Those are the kinds of things which are going to get the economy going, not introducing vaccine passports. Moving on to our next item, government to introduce stricter BEE rules for South African businesses in 2022. The Department of Employment and Labor is preparing to introduce the amended Employment Equity Act in 2022. Among other changes, the legislation will allow the Employment and Labor Minister to set employment equity targets for different business sectors. The minister can set targets for different occupational levels, subsectors, or regions. The department said the legislation aims to reduce the regulatory burden on small businesses and add rules for doing business with the government. So on the one hand, wanting to make it easier for small businesses to operate and reducing the regulatory burden, but on the other hand, giving much wider discretionary power to the minister to set very specific very specific BEE targets. So go back again to the previous item where we talked about government wanting to get the economy going again, but on the other hand, contemplating very statist and collectivist measures, which are only going to inhibit economic activity and make it more difficult for businesses to operate. One would think with a 44% unemployment rate, any government would look at removing as many of its levers in the economy as possible. But the South African government seems to be going in the opposite direction. Moving on to our next item, e-tolls are still the law and you must pay. This is according to the Transport Department. Department of Transport Director General Alec Mumi has said that the Treasury must decide on the future of e-tolls. Until then, it is the law and South Africans must pay their dues. In a virtual parliamentary meeting last week, he said that further study on e-tolls needs to be conducted and that they remain an official government program that must be respected. Mumi said, and I quote, "The Minister of Finance had a meeting this week to look at the matter, and it was agreed that further studies must be done, and then a decision will be made. Once we are clear where we are in terms of all the financial permutations we are looking at," end quote. He also went on to say that they are working on it from that particular point of view regarding financial implications, permutations. As it is, e-tolls remain a formal government program. They remain legislated and gazetted. and members of society need to comply with them until a decision says differently. So we have to continue paying those e-tolls. I mean, talk about financial permutations. They're obviously negative for South Africans who have to travel to work. Many South Africans don't have a car. They have to use taxis and buses and the like. And e-tolls add to the costs, of course, in Gauteng, which is supposed to be the economic hub of the country and indeed one of the biggest economic hubs on the continent of Africa. So again, going back to one of our central points this week of government trying to get the economy going. I mean, talk about scrapping e-tolls. That would be great for stimulating more economic activity and possibly more business activity and job creation when you make it easier for people to actually get to their place of work in the first place. Speaking of solidarity, as we did earlier with their study on NHI, they released another report in the past week which focused on the tax burden of South Africa's main income groups and how they compare to other countries. So the union used stats from Stats South Africa. The data shows that people in income decile 3 and below with a gross monthly income of 640 Rand exist below the breadline for all practical purposes. In the end, due to VAT and other taxes, the average person in decile 3 will have an effective tax rate of about 7%. So in some ways, people might say South Africa has lower taxes for low and middle income groups, but there are many other ways in which the government tries to collect its pound of flesh, as it were. When South Africa's total tax burden to the GDP is compared to that of the rest of the world, it is second only to Sweden at 26.7%. And I think we would all agree that Swedes get a lot more bang for their buck in terms of their tax money. The fact that the petrol levy is now already 40% of the fuel price implies that on average, people in this decile pay more tax in the form of petrol levies than income tax. So again, government is going to try and find ways to tax people, even those at the very lowest end of the income spectrum. Some news regarding elections. So the local elections date has been set for 1 November 2021. So if you're going to vote, you should go online to check your voter registration and make sure that you're registered to vote wherever you might be. And I think that's everything for this week that I wanted to cover. That covers the majority of news items. Just an FMF announcement on the 14th of September. So that's next week, Tuesday at 10 a.m. We're hosting the 2021 launch of the Economic Freedom of the World report that is released by the Fraser Institute in Canada. The FMF releases the report every year in partnership with the Fraser Institute. It'll be interesting to see where South Africa ranks in the latest index, whether we've improved or declined. I'm guessing we've declined, but let's see what the data tells us and what we can learn from that. So the EFW, of course, provides lots of data and insights as to why economic freedom is important for infant mortality, for life equality, for longevity, why it is better on average for citizens and countries to embrace more economic freedom than less. So we'll find out more about that on the 14th. You can go to the FMF YouTube channel after you've finished watching this video. Just go to the main page, find the stream, the link there for the event on the 14th, and make sure that you click the notification bell to set a reminder so that you can join us on the 14th from 10 a.m. The speakers will be John Dludlu from the Small Business Institute, Rex van Schalkwyk, chairman of the Free Market Foundation board, and also the chairman of the FMF's Rule of Law Board of Advisors. Pumlani Majosi, economics commentator and analyst. Myself, I'll be speaking on the issue of trade. And then finally, we will have the MC and introductory speaker, Neil Emmerich, who is a well-known voice on all matters EFW. So we hope that all of you can join us for that. You can, of course, comment in the comment section on YouTube during the discussion, during the presentations, and give your comments and views on the EFW and what you think South Africa's ranking means and what we should take forward from that. With that, I'll wrap up this week's episode. I hope you all enjoyed it and found it useful. Please remember to like the video, and please also share it on your different social media platforms. It really means a lot to us, all of your support that you provide to us at the FMF. We greatly appreciate it, and we hope that we can continue delivering more valuable content and insightful content for you as we head towards the end of the year. It's quite something to think that we're already in September. But until next time, have a great weekend. Take care out there. Stay safe. And we will talk to all of you again very soon. Till next time. Bye bye.